What does a pharmacist do? Well, most people might answer that a pharmacist dispenses the medications that my doctor prescribes. Now, I work with a ton of great pharmacists, and one thing that I don't generally see is excitement about pills in a vial. And this is probably because pharmacists have been trained to do so much more. So what can you get excited about in your community? To find out, let's go beyond the scripts. Hey, welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm your host, Will Tuft with Pioneer RX. And again, we have a great guest with us today. This guest is actually somebody that may be very familiar to a lot of our viewers out there. If you've ever been to NCPA or if you've ever really just been around the pharmacy industry for a while, you've probably crossed paths with David Figg. So David Figg joins us today from Rice's Pharmacy out in Kentucky. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Will. It's wonderful being here with you. I'm a little awkward. I'm on the wrong side of this. I'm usually supposed to be listening, not being a participant in this. So I'm a little out of my element.
That's okay. That's okay. Awkward is the secret sauce for this podcast. So no worries. So tell me a little bit about Rice's Drug and kind of how Rice's Drug fits into that community, because you're in a very small community. Probably, to say that you serve a certain number of patients would probably be better represented by saying what percentage of the city that you've actually served.
Yeah. So, we're in Western Kentucky. As you've been here, it is a small community. County-wide, I think we're looking at 10,000 people. City alone, I think it's about 4,000. So we're very small. We've been in business for about 55 years. So it was started by my stepfather.
When I was on the installation team, you were one of the pharmacies that I got to visit and really got to see what independent pharmacy can be, especially in a small community, and just how many hats you're able to wear and how many creative ways you found to serve your community. So before we dive into the pharmacy side, I think it is really neat to get kind of a full picture of what Rice's Drug or Rice's Pharmacy brings to your community.
Sure. So obviously we've got the pharmacy, we've got the durable medical equipment, we got that kind of stuff. But what you're talking about is our gift gallery. So we've got about 13,000 square feet here at the pharmacy. And majority of that is in gifts. So whether it be just birthday gifts all the way to, or anniversary gifts, all the way down to furniture. So we sell high-end furniture on top of that. We do high-end jewelry. We do chocolates and candies. So we run the gamut in what you could purchase here, and it is kind of the one-stop shop for the area.
Yeah, it's a really neat experience. I remember being kind of new to the team, walking in and just being really kind of floored by the scope of your business there and all the things you bring to that community. Because in a small community like that, you're probably not going to have a lot of options for a big box furniture retailer and a Merle Norman and a candy store. So it really is this neat slice of Americana where you have that local apothecary meeting so many of those needs for the community. So just a really neat pharmacy to visit. If anyone's ever going through Kentucky, definitely make sure you swing into Beaver Dam. And then you also have another location now, correct?
That's right. We do. We've got another location just north of us. It's extremely small in a clinic. And so clinic pharmacy is all it is, but in Fordsville, Kentucky. So, yeah.
Okay. And those two are about 30 minutes apart. And I put them out on Google Maps and just did kind of a street view. I was curious to what the locals would see if they were to traverse. And, very rural area, beautiful part of the country, but definitely out there where you probably have a really, really large patient base, even if your local population census doesn't reflect that directly in your city. So, how have you found that serving in that community is going to be different than what maybe a new pharmacist is encountering at, their first year at a big box.
Yeah, anytime, and when you're dealing with independent pharmacy, as you know, it's all about the relationship. It's about building relationship with the patients. It's less about the pills in the bottle and filling prescriptions, and more about building that relationship. And that's how we serve. That's how we take care of patients. So that's the name of the game.
So, did you always know that you were going to jump right into independent pharmacy because the small town of Beaver Dam was just where you wanted to stay and never see the world, or were you drawn away from the family business and then reeled back in? How'd that come to be? Because I have to imagine, there's always that small town curiosity. You want to go out and see what else is in the world.
Yeah, goodness, yeah. Funny question. So I wanted to run away from pharmacy. Grew up in the pharmacy, wanted nothing to do with it. In my mind was not wired for pharmacy. So I thought for sure I would not be in the pharmacy. That was the last place I wanted to be. So silly me, I went into engineering, and I've actually got an engineering degree in computer engineering and a master's in operations. I worked for IBM for a while, and then did a lot of software development for manufacturing. And so I did all of that kind of engineering stuff for about 10 plus years. And I was actually one of the weird things. I was in Chicago O'Hare. I was working on the baggage handling system at Chicago O'Hare, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I had to go back to the family business, that here I am saving companies millions and millions of dollars and family business is struggling, and that I needed to go back. And so that's how I got into pharmacy.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes, maybe that's what it takes, is seeing what else is out there, seeing how green the grass is, and then realizing, hey, that Kentucky bluegrass was pretty good. Let me get back.
That's right. And it is. I mean, when I got into pharmacy and I came back to the family business, of course, I had a lot of learning to do. Growing up in it was one thing, but getting into the business of it was a whole nother thing. But it was amazing to look back at how all of my experiences in engineering and in operations, how they apply to pharmacy. I mean, it is an operation, there's a workflow to it. And so it's been really neat to see how that pairs together.
Yeah, I think you would definitely have a different perspective without that experience than what you brought. So how did that transition take place? Did you step in as a kind of in a managerial or operational analysis role, or did you go in through a more traditional role on the bench? How did that transition kind of take place?
Sure. Not being a pharmacist, I came in as operations. So it was all about just trying to optimize the workflow, trying to figure out where profit centers were and grow that profitability, and just try to make things far more efficient than they were before. So that's where I started.
Interesting. So I was doing a little bit of web sleuthing, seeing what I could find out about David Figg that I didn't already know. And I was really surprised to find an entry on the Dave Ramsey website where he mentioned you, and it was talking about your success at that pharmacy. And wanted to talk a little bit about that because and Dave Ramsey would hate to hear this, but I've kind of made the Dave Ramsey-ish commitment, which he is not a big fan of. So I'm big purchases. I'm very careful, but I'm not going to eat beans and rice until the house is paid for. I'm not going that far with it, Dave. So if anybody's not familiar with the Dave Ramsey financial coaching, definitely something to check out. And I promise that'll be funnier once you do. But how do you think that affected, that transition back into a privately owned business, coming from those larger businesses and seeing, that larger scale? And then do you think that really kind of made you a better caretaker of, your pharmacy and of your family's business?
Yeah, it certainly did. Dave Ramsey and that group has been a wonderful asset to us. We've had a relationship with them for years. They're about an hour and a half away. Their offices are from us, and so we've made several trips down. I've taken leadership down and met with that group, but they have been a blessing to us. So we've learned a lot. And when you say how has it impacted, one of the biggest impacts is from the financial standpoint is just trying to operate this business in a debt-free manner. And that's one of those principles that we try to stick to. In this business, you can get your head cut off very quickly if you don't watch your finances. There's a lot of money going back and forth. There's DIR fees and things that change with the stroke of a pen. And so watching the finances and making sure that you operate in a very practical way limits the risk of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know 2024, we talked a little bit about in the last podcast we did, where there is going to be that first quarter where everybody's going to have to be super diligent and hopefully preparing well ahead of time so that they're not caught off guard during that first quarter where those DIR fees are going to be, right there on the point of purchase instead of the back end. So you're going to be paying that fourth quarter and then getting hit immediately with those first quarters. So while we're talking finance, do you have any advice on, how to prepare for that and what to expect?
Yeah, I don't know any advice. Our approach is simply cash reserves. Making sure that we have the cash reserves. Go ahead and calculate what that's going to mean to you. Just like you said, you've got basically you're going to be paying 2 quarters in one, and calculate what that means to you. Make sure you've got that reserve or that line of credit if that's the way you operate things. But it's going to hit.
So in your pharmacy, you guys have quite a few OTC offerings, retail offerings, gift, household, just all kind of things that kind of help supplement that that prescription income. With the past couple years being really tight with reimbursements and a lot of pharmacies struggling with margins because of those DIR fees and low reimbursements. Have you found that certain areas of your business were able to kind of backfill those gaps and get you through this season of change, hopefully, on the horizon?
Yeah, we always see the ebbs and flows of that. We're always looking at what non-PBM income looks like and how can we grow those non-PBM incomes. You can only cut half a percentage points here and there in purchasing. That only goes so far. And so finding those areas that you can add dollars to the bottom line outside of the PBM is certainly a win for pharmacy. And when you compare that up against the dispensing, when the dispensing can lead to that, that's the big win.
Yeah. And I guess a lot of those opportunities are really going to depend on, the individual communities that the pharmacies find themselves in and what niche can be filled and what niche they, I guess, have filled in the community for years and years and years. But have you maybe found some opportunities that you were not excited about that didn't pan out?
I always have failures, so
Yeah.
learning experiences, let's call them that.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, there's been I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's been all kinds of products that I brought in and thought this is gonna be the winner, and they're still sitting on the shelf. So we have those things all the time, but you can't be afraid to jump on them. Try it.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. You never know what is going to really, be the thing that takes off. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and every now and then she is just stuck on a product that surprises me out of nowhere. Like the last one was like a random sour candy that is really popular at school, and now you can't find it anywhere in town. And I think it's been there for years, So I don't know what sparks that contagious drive,
I've not figured out how to stay on top of trendy because if I like it, it probably means it's not trendy. So
Yeah, you need to hire a 9-year-old. That's the key. But no, you never know. I was in an independent pharmacy in Washington State, and they had a display rack with these little like squishy, soft, like they're little stuffed animals, but they smelled like whatever they were shaped like. So the ice cream cone shaped like ice cream, whiffer sniffers, I think they were called. And it was just like that season, they were just blowing through those. It was a great retail thing, but you never know what's going to strike gold like that.
that's right. Yeah. And what we see on the retail side is if we pick up on something like that's a perfect example of one of those things that my kids have them. Everybody has that thing. And they
Yeah.
sell like crazy. But the one thing that we've always figured out is once they start selling, don't keep reordering because you're going to sit on a bunch of these things in the end because as quick as it came on, it's going away that quick.
Yeah, you don't want to have the 75% off rack of those next season still sitting there. There's something to be said for creating scarcity.
That's right.
So back on the pharmacy side, you guys offer quite a few different solutions. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing there outside of dispensing. So enhanced services. I know you're the head luminary there and the Kentucky CPESN group. So tell me about some of the enhanced services you offer.
Yeah, so with CPSN, we've been doing that for a while, trying to push on that. And of course, that's an ever evolving thing. It keeps changing on us. We keep learning more and growing more. We've got a couple of programs here in Kentucky with Medicaid MCO and a few other little things that the MCO programs are pretty good where you're managing patient care. And so we've got some great pharmacists that do that kind of monitor those patients, manage them, touch points with them every month. It's been a great program. And I love seeing pharmacy get involved in the care that they're capable of outside of dispensing. And, obviously the dispensing brings it along, but kind of finding those niches. And I think, we've been doing some great things there. We've got, obviously different, blood pressure monitoring and that kind of stuff, but we're always pushing on the envelope on that a little bit, trying to understand where we can fill a void, where we can help a patient, and serve them better.
Yeah, so I think so many pharmacies are probably doing some of those things every day already, if not in the framework of an agreement with one of those managed care organizations. So how do you go about starting that conversation and growing that relationship?
Well, you're right. All these pharmacies are doing all of this stuff all the time. And this is where I wanted to just throw out to Pioneer, kudos to you guys for helping build that into the workflow, and not trying to throw a plug in, but the way you guys have done it in this I know how software can be when things are evolving, and you guys have done a great job at trying to keep up with that. And so it's been wonderful. As far as starting those programs, there's two levels to this. You've got to go after the payer program if you want to try to get paid for it. So whether it be the employer, whether it be, through state legislature or through state relationships, building those relationships and trying to leverage those relationships to show the value we bring is certainly important. And you got to do that. As far as building it within the pharmacy, that's where everybody seems to struggle, including ourselves. We don't have the answer to that yet. It's very difficult. It keeps being this thing that's off to the side, right? This patient care thing, this patient management thing is this extra little project that's going on off to the side. Getting it incorporated totally into workflow has been a challenge. Pioneer does a great job with helping us with that, but we're still not there. I had a conversation just the other day with a pharmacist that, it's great that we're really helping patients with this. Like we're really impacting their health. And it's not fair to the patients that we can only do that when we're not busy. We should be able to offer that same level of care when we're busy as we can when we're not. And that's where we're always struggling. And it's just it's a mindset, and trying to get that mindset, trying to make sure that you're handling and touching those points throughout workflow is it's a struggle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely an easy conversation to have when you see that there's a drug-drug interaction. And when you see something pop up in workflow, I need to call and talk about this problem. I think maybe it gets a little bit harder to make sure that you're checking in with that patient when there's not a problem on the surface. To dig a little deeper and make that patient tell you about the problem that maybe they had in the back of their mind, or something that wouldn't come up if you didn't trigger that opportunity for them to share that with you.
That's right. The interventions are easy to act on. It's the case where you need to identify an intervention that's hard to act on, and that's what takes a little time.
Yeah. I mean, you never know what information's going to come if you can just roll out that first question, just start that conversation. So, how do you see that evolving? It's in the typical retail model. A lot of times, the pharmacist is in the back, they're doing verification, and the face-to-face interaction with the patient a lot of time is with the least clinical members of the staff. So how do you think that opportunity might be kind of moved to a different point in workflow, or just dig a little bit deeper than the, everybody gets counseling Oprah rules?
Yeah. I always look back at, like, say, not to throw out like CRM tools and those types of things, where when you bring up a customer, you see all of their information, you kind of see all of the dialogue that's happened, right? In essence, that's kind of how the e-care plan works. I think over time, we're going to see that, when we go into Pioneer and we bring up a patient, we see their profile, we see a list of all the medications they take. I think over time, we're going to see that switch to, when we bring up a patient, we see the dialogue first, and then we dig into the prescription. That's where we've got to get to. And I'm not saying that that's what needs to happen today, but I think ultimately that's where things need to get to.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, you just kind of touched on a very different mindset. So recently, we've made some changes in Pioneer where we brought a lot of those tools like labs, care plans, and messages right there to that RX profile. So that all those tabs are right there. But what you said was like a CRM tool, and all of a sudden, if you switch to a salesman mentality, you're going to all of a sudden follow that lead instead of fill those prescriptions, and it's a little bit different mindset, I think.
It is. I'm not sure everybody's ready for it yet, but it's where it's going to go. We've got to get there. Yeah.
So you're doing some interesting things there in the pharmacy to serve those patients. So if a patient does come to you with a chronic disease state, so if they come to you with a hypertension medication, what products are you able to offer them, or lifestyle coaching? Are you able to seize that opportunity when you see that patient's going to be struggling outside of just taking that prescription?
Yeah, so we've got some clinical pharmacists that do watch for that stuff, that are capable of intervening in that manner, through whether it be some coaching, motivational interviewing, that kind of stuff, or whether it be supplements on top of medications that they may be making. Not being a pharmacist, I can't even speak to that. I just speak to the workflow and how they can handle that, how they do that in an efficient and valuable manner. That's where I always look at it.
Gotcha. Are you guys doing a lot of deliveries out there? Because looking at the Google Maps view, it seems like you might be serving a very, very large area, which kind of creates a few logistical issues. So have you been able to find ways to make that efficient and profitable, or has the delivery kind of been a loss leader, or just a relationship tool? How have you kind of leveraged that? Because I imagine you were doing a lot of that prior to COVID as well, and then especially, during the pandemic.
Yeah. Delivery is a big thing for us. As you said, we're rural. It goes way out into various areas of the county. We've been doing it for years, but yes, the pandemic just increased it. It made it even more of a need, made it more of a convenience for people. And so we do a ton of delivery on a daily basis. We've got, 3 cars out at all times, moving deliveries out. We've managed to try to make that more efficient, but it's a challenge. It is not a profitable thing. It's something that is truly just for relationship building. It gives the opportunity for delivery drivers to kind of see the environment that a patient's in, report that back. That's all can be part of that patient care. And so that's kind of how we see it.
Yeah.
You bring up a point that, from a pandemic standpoint, pandemic just changed workflow in general, and all across the board, whether all through the pharmacy. And that's one of the big projects we've got for this year, is just trying to re-architect workflow now after the pandemic, because, we were probably about 60% of our prescriptions were picked up in store. During the pandemic, we went mostly drive-through or delivery. And so now we're looking at nearly just about 20% of the prescriptions are picked up in store now. So it's certainly changed the way things operate.
Yeah, definitely. So have you found that delivery option is important to not only have that relationship and to make sure those patients are getting their medications, but have you found that is a way to curtail steering towards mail order, and make sure that you're able to maintain that level of care that you've probably had for generations in some families?
Yeah, absolutely. It's retention, and it's hard to get. When the mail order comes and says it's going to be more convenient to get it by mail, it's a heck no, it's not. It's more convenient for that delivery driver Joe to come bring it to me that I know.
That's it's one of those things in a rural area, especially. It's like, man, do I want to drive 30 minutes to Rice's? Maybe they can just transfer that in. So I imagine there's probably a lot of patients that you've been able to maintain because of that. Another thing that you're doing is the open enrollment counseling. So tell me a little bit about that. I think that's a really interesting service that, if you're not talking to those patients, there's a really good opportunity that they're going to get picked off, and steered into one of those mail order situations.
Yeah, it's a probability that they're going to get steered into one of those situations. So, this is one of those interesting things that it's a great opportunity for us to maintain that patient and to keep them in the pharmacy. But it is also a huge value to the patient themselves. The amount of, manipulation or things that I see going wrong with patients in their Medicare plans is unbelievable. And to have someone that's on their side to make sure that they're getting into the right plans, helping them make those decisions. I mean, it's one of the most confusing things that I've ever seen. I mean, only the government could come up with Medicare and make it that confusing, right? And they don't understand it, rightfully so. And giving them an option to try to just boil it down, help them understand, help them make a wise decision has been a great value for them. And it's good to see and just how much it helps them.
Yeah, I can only imagine, in that situation, a lot of people are probably looking, to the same decision-making tools they look to in other areas of their life. So they're going to look to their spouse, their friends, their, somebody else who has had that same experience. And maybe they found a plan that worked great for them. So that's the one I'll use, when that might be really, really detrimental given their regimen. So, it could really make their copays go up and all those things. So
you see that all the time, the husband and wife on the same plan. I had one come in last year during open enrollment. They had signed up for the same plan. Husband liked it. Wife got the same one. Found another plan that literally saved her $5,000 for the year. I mean, so that's the kind of value that they see in it, and it's great. We've even gone so far as we've partnered with a local agency that helps with this. So it's been a great great tool.
Very cool. So you've got the second location there. Tell me a little bit about that second location and how those two locations are able to work together and independently, of course.
Sure. The second location, like I said before, it's a very small clinic pharmacy in a small town. I think town has about 400 or 500 people is all it is. And we went in partnership with the local hospital. So they put in a clinic, we put in a pharmacy alongside, and it has been a great value for that community. 30 minutes away, they're 30 minutes away from anything. And having the pharmacy there in town they've been very appreciative of it. It's been a great service for them. It's nothing like our store in Beaver Dam. It's a low volume, it's very small, but we offer that same level of relationship building. And so it's been good, with the link between Pioneer with Central Server and those things. It's been great because we don't have to have the same hours. We were open late hours in our Beaver Dam location. And the small store doesn't have to have that. They can still, if they want to drive after hours, 30 minutes, they can still get their prescriptions through that because of that link. So it's been a great addition to our services.
Nice. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you had central office there or not. If you're not familiar with central office and you're watching this, that just gives you the ability to basically operate two independent pharmacies and easily share prescriptions. So a patient can get one refill here, one refill there, and you're able to manage everything centrally. So aptly named. But yeah, I guess with having those, that 30-minute drive, you wouldn't necessarily think that there's going to be patient overlap. But as I've lived in a rural community, everything's 30 minutes away. So a 30-minute drive is it's no big deal in those situations.
It is. It was a tough decision because of that. What you're saying is a tough decision to open that store because literally we weren't adding patients by opening that store. We were just transitioning patients for the most part. So, but it's been a good thing.
Yeah. So have you explored the option of, moving out into other rural opportunities, whether it's, one day a week or a pickup location or things like that to better connect with some of those other rural parts of Kentucky?
Yeah, we've looked at expansion. We look at different areas and seeing if there's opportunities for that. One of our guiding principles, though, is, independent pharmacy needs to be a community. And we don't want to go into a place where we're going to step on somebody else. If they are serving those patients, they need to keep serving it. I don't want to just go in just to compete with them. And so finding that great opportunity where you're not doing that, luckily has been a challenge so far.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good for the members of those communities that they have an option, and also that they're those limited options there are being ran well. So 2023, what do you see changing there? You guys have been doing Rice's Pharmacy there for 60 years? I guess 1968, was it?
1968, that's right. So we've been here for a while.
A lot of changes in that time. So what other changes do you have on the horizon? What are you excited about these days?
Yeah, we've got lots of things that we're working on. We've just had meetings this last month about what the strategic plan is for 2023. Coming out of the pandemic, we spent 2-3 years just trying to keep our head above water, right? And so it's just block and tackle is all you could do. And so this is one of those unique times again where we can just kind of vision and try to figure out what's the plan. So we've got nearly 50 some odd projects that we've got in works for 2023 that we're trying to accomplish. So things from team development, things that relate to the team, things that relate to operations, the products we sell, the principles we have. So those are all kind of the areas that we focus around.
Nice. So we'll start with that one. I want to see if I can pry another one off your list, but let's start with the teams, because that was something that I also ran across when I was web sleuthing and found that you do have a lot of longtime employees. in a community that is so small, you're going to have those personal relationships with all of your employees, with all of your customers, and probably a much different job market than people may have in a more urban setting. So, how have you kind of managed those teams and those team relationships to, make it through the Great Resignation, as it were?
Yeah, yeah, it's been a challenge. So, we faced that just like everybody else when a few months ago, about a year ago, I guess, when the Great Resignation, you start seeing the turnover, and we had to take a stance to try to figure out how do we pump the brakes on this? How do we stop this turnover? We've got a great team. We can't lose it. And so we did several things to try to do that, through appreciation, through professional development, through, growth of employees. One of our guiding principles is we don't just give raises just to give raises. We give promotions. And so our goal is always, some people certainly deserve more pay. And our goal is always to try to promote. How do we grow them so that they can grow to a new position? And that's the goal. So more pay just breeds entitlement, and we can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done that. We've done lots of things. The other thing we found was during that time and this new job market, this new group of employees that come in, kind of from that social media age where everything has to have that instant feedback, and they're looking for that instant acknowledgement or instant recognition. And us as employers, we can't do that instantly. Like, we cannot constantly do that for everybody. We're dealing with a team of about 50 people, and I can't do that for everyone. And so we've brought in a program that will allow them to encourage and grow each other. And so they can, hey, you did a great job at the window or helping me with that patient, and they give away points. And so it's been this neat aspect where they can trade points and use those points to buy gift cards and different things. So it's kind of been neat to see that growth, that encouragement, and that positivity grow in the culture. So
Nice. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people get out of their role in community pharmacy intrinsically is that satisfaction of serving, that instant feedback they get every time they help a customer. When a patient comes in with a problem and they're able to do something to positively affect somebody else, that intrinsically has a reward that I think is probably a greater motivator than just a raise anyways, or else they'd be doing something else. So that's definitely.
That's right. I heard a quote the other day that they said, your best employees are actually volunteers, because they could probably make more money somewhere else, right? So they're staying with you because they're volunteering that difference to be with you, to have that satisfaction in helping the patient, to have that satisfaction to work in your culture. And so, you got to view those good employees you've got, the good team members, as volunteers.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. Any other, advice in that area? Was it a certain program that you followed, or a certain professional development approach that you've taken, or just kind of a culmination of many different things over the years?
Yeah, so the big thing we did is we broke down all the different roles in the pharmacy. And instead of just saying you've got technicians, I've got 30 technicians, you've got different layers of technicians, right? They have got different titles, they've got different growth paths. And so we developed that growth path, put that out to the team so they know what their next layer is, where their next rung on the ladder can be, and what they've got to accomplish to get to that. And so it gives them satisfaction. It would give me satisfaction to know where my next level is and how I can get there.
Nice. I love that, because the tech role especially is such a varied role, from across the country and from store to store. If you go to, a chain store, or if you go to a small independent with, one or two technicians that have been there for years, their responsibilities could vary so greatly. So to be able to actually acknowledge that and have a title and kind of that that designation and acknowledgement is pretty substantial in itself. I think that's something that definitely every pharmacy can do. And in fact, you can use the roles and permissions in the software to, allow those permissions and give those reminders and tangible kind of a reality of that role, and instead of just something that exists in the ether. But that's definitely something that every pharmacy can do.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing you want is a technician. Like we were seeing it. You got a technician that came in 5 years later, they still see themselves as a technician, and that's all. We see their growth. We see how much they've grown and all the new different responsibilities they've taken on. And their pay has probably reflected that over the 5 years. But to them, they just see themselves as a technician. And you got to change that. So utilizing what's in Pioneer for the tech levels, the new responsibilities, the new permissions that are given, that's great. Using things like Pioneer University to help grow them in those new roles as well. So those are all tools to be used in the process.
Yeah, what a great way to fight that kind of feeling of I've been here 5 years and maybe I've plateaued when, they're just doing such a great job and don't feel that way. So yeah, I love that. That's something I'm going to make sure we talk about at Connect. I'm going to put that in my tips and tricks class.
It's a great idea. Go for it,
Will. So when you're not there at the pharmacy, you're also wearing a lot of other hats, helping other pharmacies in the state. So through your role with NCPA and with CPESN, but also the Kentucky Pharmacy Association, you're definitely keeping busy, making sure that the profession moves forward as well. So how did that become something that you realized was important and you felt that you needed to devote a portion of your time to that specifically?
Yeah, when we saw reimbursements start going down, we saw the impact of the PBMs, several years ago. We had to come up with a strategy of how to fight this. And I think every pharmacy out there did the same thing, right? Our strategy is that you've got to fight it on multiple levels. You've got to fight it, in your pharmacy. You can't just do business as usual, right? Your operations has to handle that, and it has to evolve and change. So we got to fight it in the operations. You've got to fight it in showing value in the service that you offer. So not just pills in the bottle, right? We've got to show value through CPSN, through clinical works, showing that those services, those things that you're doing to help a patient that you're always doing, we've got to document that. That's got to be out there somewhere so that somebody sees that. So we've got to show value. And then you've also got to fight it legislatively. We've got to be in front of legislators. We've got to be in front of state, federal. We've got to keep pushing on this thing. It is not right. It is not fair. It should be. There is illegal actions going on here, I'm convinced, but we've got to fight that and show that. And so that's how I got involved, is building the fight. Most pharmacies, I'm in that unique position, not because I've got a better position, but I'm in a position where I'm not tied to the bench like most pharmacy owners are. It's just a unique position. And so I've got the opportunity to go. Luckily, I can go to Frankfort in Kentucky here. I can go to DC and meet with legislators and talk about these things. And so that's how I got involved with KPHA, Kentucky Pharmacists Association, serve on the Government Affairs Committee for them. I'm also on the board of Kentucky Independent Pharmacy Alliance, for an alliance of just independent pharmacies across the state, where we're constantly fighting things here in the state as well. We're also working with James Comer in DC. If you saw recently the hearings on PBMs, he's leading that charge. And so we're constantly pushing on this in all three levels.
Yeah. I've been watching all of that. It was really great to see some of the community pharmacies get to share their voice on that. Osterhaus did an amazing job. And it seems like Kentucky is really in a unique position, given that you actually have a couple of representatives for your state that have firsthand experience with Donald Douglas, but then also Danny Bentley, who himself was a rock star pharmacist that I'm going to have on this show one day. He may be too hard to get to these days, but
you'd be in for a treat. So he's a funny one. But yeah, I mean, he's a pharmacist and he's a great advocate for our profession at the state level.
Yeah, I feel like there's, again, so many different businesses looking to, improve their business culture and their industry and fighting to get the ear of those representatives. And so to have somebody who's actually a pharmacist and really has a unique understanding of the intricacies of PBMs and pharmacy billing can be a great help. So right now there's a couple interesting bills going through. You have the HB 350 and SB 149. So what changes do you see coming down the pipeline in Kansas City or in Kentucky that may be able to, help influence the rest of the country?
Yeah. We've got, a PBM reform bill that is modeled after a lot of the other states, Arkansas and others, that is just trying to rein in the reach of PBMs and what they can do. Unfortunately, this session we're dealing with a short session. They only meet for just a few days, and so we don't have a lot of time to get things through. But we're pushing hard, and it would certainly impact. It's always hard to be the first one to get it out there. It's even, it's a little easier for the second one. But as we see these things happen across the country, we will see the change happen.
Yeah, it definitely seems like there's been a wave of momentum and awareness. 2 or 3 years ago, I don't think anybody knew what a PBM was unless unless you were getting the claw back in the mail every now and then. You didn't know what a PBM was. And I feel like at this point, it's at least common knowledge that there's a problem. And I know the first quarter of 2024 is going to be difficult, but it's a big step for transparency, and nothing can really change until you have that.
That's right. Being able to highlight the impact and being able to highlight how it impacts a specific script, I think, is going to be key. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be a key. And you bring up a good point. Like I said, they couldn't spell it a few years ago. And I teach a class at Columbia University in New York. So I come up as a guest lecturer once a year. And I've been talking about this for probably about 8-9 years. I've been doing this. In the first class that I talked to, and we talked about PBMs, we talked about healthcare, basically pricing, drug pricing, and that kind of stuff. And I threw in the whole PBM concept and what's going on and the impact that's having on drug pricing. And they didn't understand it at all. Like, I had to take 3 steps back, explain the landscape, really try to explain how it all works to them. Now I go up and I just mention PBM and they already understand what it's about. So the education is certainly happening. It's happening in the universities. It's happening all the way through the healthcare system. So that's a huge plus and shows great momentum that we're seeing.
Yeah, it's been really interesting just to see the conversation and the awareness change. It's not the pharmacy making up this price. It's not that you need to go to Canada because drug manufacturers are just more expensive here because they're greedy here, but they're not greedy in Canada. There's a lot of other factors at play. And even recently, and I wanted to get your take on this because I thought it was interesting. The story that everyone sees is that Eli Lilly is cutting insulin prices 70%. When the real story is, Eli Lilly has 2 alternatives to insulin that are being released into the market. And now the big 3 manufacturers for insulin are really going to be kind of facing just one major manufacturer with those 2 alternatives that are, I guess, biosimilar, if not generic. But so even in that great news story, it was really interesting to see how the facts were just a little bit skewed to tell the story in a certain way. Even if it is great news, There's definitely more to the story than what the average consumer, I think, is going to take from the headlines.
Yeah, I agree. I saw the same thing. You know, you're dealing with the biosimilar that's coming out that's literally only going to be $5 difference. So, you know, they're just preempting this. And so, yeah, that's what people aren't seeing coming along the pike.
Yeah. So any other exciting news you see out there? Any exciting changes you're looking for in 2023 and 2024?
It can't come soon enough, but I hope we're seeing some change. You know, seeing the things that are coming out through the FTC, I think is exciting. I remain optimistic. I remain very optimistic that change is happening, and I hope it happens sooner than later, but I still am optimistic that it's going to happen.
Yeah. So back in the summer 2023, into the new normal, trade show season approaching. How are you feeling about the trade show season? Are you going to be out making the rounds and in the new normal, back out on just like we were before COVID, or what's your summer look like?
Oh yeah, I'll be at all of them, I'm sure. I know I'll be at in Nashville with you guys, so I'm certainly looking forward to that. That's always a great show. So I try to make as many as I can. I'll always learn something, whether it be in the sessions and sitting through sessions or just talking to folks across the table. Always learn something that's valuable.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing you out on the road this summer. I'm going to let you get back to work today and serve your community. But thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to catching up with you later on and seeing what you've marked off of that list and what worked and what didn't work.
I'll keep you updated.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Well, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Scripts, presented by the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime we post new content. To stay up to date with all of the latest independent pharmacy news and content, follow Pioneer RX on your preferred social media platform.